This is Jess with Local Music Somewhere, and you're listening to rBeatz Radio.
All right, guys. I'd like to thank those of you tuning in to rBeatz Radio. We're here with the Local Music Somewhere segment, and I'm Jessica Drake Mosher, and today I'm joined by Terry Hudson and EKLY, also known as Kyle, right? So I am going to kind of start with you, EKLY. We're joined by a rap artist up and coming out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I know you have a new release coming out soon, or is it just now dropping? Can you tell me a little bit about your newest project?
The newest project, something completely different that's been going on in my full length of my music career, even though it's been like really short, you know, but only being 17. But yeah, so a lot has happened in such a short time. I mean, at least I think, and I think I made it, I mean, I haven't made it anywhere that I would want to make, but I feel like with this release and getting it to the right people, that's what my whole plan is. Because I feel like with the other ones, I was just kind of putting it out there, you know, and hoping it would get in the right hands. But with this one, I'm talking to people like right now and hoping that instead of just releasing it, that it will be releasing to the right people instead of just releasing it and hoping it will get there. You know what I mean? Right.
Yeah. It's such an intense process because you go through all this artistry and you really work on your craft. And then when you get to that step, it's like a whole different ball game. And, you know, you have a lot of different advice from different people, and it's kind of hard to, know what to do. And that changes all the time because you're talking about new types of social media, new AI even involved, how you do the ads. It changes all the time, the platforms. Yeah. So when we're talking to EKLY today, and even myself, I've put out, my own personal music and do some licensing and things like that. I know that it evolves all the time. So any advice or input, is extremely valuable.
But one thing I love about what EKLY is doing and his attitude is when I run into a lot of new artists, they think they have to learn everything and put something out, or they think they have to get it to a certain level and put it out. And people want to see your growth. So one of the things that I tell people is your first creation will not be a masterpiece, but without your first creation, you will never have a masterpiece. So he has put out stuff, got it to where people are used to him putting out stuff. And now he's got, something that he wants in the right hands, but you never get there, without putting other stuff out first and then learning as you go. Right. If you want to be a singer, be a singer. If you want to be a director, be a director. If you want to be, in the music industry, just go be a manager and learn while you're doing it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you just got to pick up that experience any way that you can.
Right.
I see here that you've also written a book.
The latest one that I have on Amazon is one called Timeline. And that's basically getting to where you want to go, reinventing yourself in a 3-year process. Because one thing with everything that's going on is everybody thinks they have to do it immediately. Especially younger artists, you have to do it. You have to do it immediately. And everything's a process. There's so much groundwork, and even when you're in the process. So I hope to use that to just help them understand, it's not going to happen in a week.
Right. Actually, I do want to talk about that because I listened to your music, and I've seen you live, and you guys had a great, you really had a great thing going on stage at Evening Muse down there in Charlotte. And I wanted to talk to you about how you formulate your tracks and your lyrics and how these song ideas come to be. Do you kind of have like a lyrical idea in mind first, or do you start with the music and kind of see how it goes? Like, what do you typically do when you're creating?
I think it could be either or at any point in time. Like sometimes it could come with lyrics first, or sometimes it's the music first. But I feel like since the Evening Muse, like a lot has changed. Like formulating my image since the Evening Muse has been really big on my mind since then, because I feel like around then when I performed there, I was doing stuff and making songs that weren't like me. And when I say me, like I remember my cousin was asking me that question. He was like, "What do you mean by you?" And I was like, because a lot of people say me, they're talking about personality or anything like that, you know what I mean? But when I say me, if I can't mentally see what's going on, like create a movie out of my music in my mind, then I feel like it's not me. You know what I'm saying? Like if I see anybody else, like another artist or any type of thing, inside my mind while like it's like a music movie that's going on inside my mind. So if I see like anything else that's like that I feel like shouldn't be there, then I feel like it's not me. So like I did kind of like an old school thing. Remember that? It was like a kind of old school, and that wasn't. I could do it, but I feel like that wasn't me. So I took that. I like took that completely off of Apple Music and Spotify and all that. Like I took a lot of stuff down and kept a lot of stuff up that I thought was me. And this new thing is like I feel like it's all me. But yeah, I just do a lot of stuff from home. I used to record in the studio, but they had like it wasn't really good production. So I was like, I just gotta figure out. Yeah, I mean, it was like it kind of sounded like yeah, it was like it sounded like it was all going through like what's it called? Like a phone, like an old telephone. Like, I don't know, like it had like a certain type of effect on it. And I was like, can you take the effects off? And he would be like, there's no effects on it. I was like, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so I was like, all right, so this is not working out. You know what I'm saying? So I got to start doing this from home. You know, so I have to figure out how to do this, how to mix and master, get my, what is it, USPC or number or whatever it's called, the type of number. Yeah. So I figured out how to do all that and mix and produce and all that. And so once I figured that out with my own music and record and buy the mics and just, it's a whole process like you were just talking about. And
but look how you're learning that process. I mean, you sound like a seasoned guy, and you know, you just started this in 8th grade.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, it's just, it was a whole process. But yeah, to be here, I feel like this is just a even though it's like small, I feel like this is a big milestone by itself. You know what I'm saying? Just being here talking to all you.
And when I listen to your music, I really can hear an overall feeling and vibe throughout it with the textures that you're using. And one of the things I wanted to mention to you today in person is that I love your style of the background vocals that you put in with the reverb. I think that it just like creates a good fabric behind what you're doing. And it's when I listen to an artist, I like to hear kind of the thread of what that artist is as far as like you, like what we're talking about, like what is specifically you.
Right.
Yeah. Just tell me a little bit about who inspires you. Maybe not necessarily that you sound like anyone, but you know, things like that. Yeah.
People who inspire me. I feel like I've gotten a lot of ideas musically from a lot of, well, I mean, I actually didn't grow up listening to hip hop or rap even. And I feel like my music wouldn't even be in the genre of just rap. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it's not really, I wouldn't even call myself just like a rap artist, you know, because I mean, if in school or anything, if you go a lot of places, if like as a black male, if you come up to somebody and you say, I'm an artist, they're going to immediately think of rap. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like I wouldn't put myself in just that one genre, but, or just that genre, like, you know what I'm saying? But, yeah, so I feel I grew up actually listening to a lot of rock and just stuff like that. So, Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, just anybody like that. Just, I mean, all those 90s and 80s bands, 100%. I love those guys. Those are like perfect. Yeah, 100%. LA Guns, all those Axl Rose, just everybody like that. I mean, Motley Crue is one of my favorite. I mean, that's literally my favorite band. But yeah, so I actually got introduced to what's it called, rap and hip hop stuff like that in around 4th and 5th grade, and like one of my first songs were like Panda by Designer and Racer by Black Beatles. And because remember there was like a big thing, like it was like where you had to stand still for a while. That was like back in like 2000. I don't know, it was like a whole type of thing where people were doing that in school. But yeah, so I didn't start listening to hip hop or anything like that until like 5th grade. But now with the background effects like you were talking about, started to hear that, and I feel like it creates more of an ambience for like the ears, you know what I'm saying? Because it's all it's like I feel like it's more than just listening to something and you actually have to hear it, you know what I'm saying? So like what I like to try to do with my music is like if like almost subconsciously hearing the stuff in the background, you know what I'm saying? Like you're not actually hearing it, but your brain's still picking up on it, and that's a lot of things that people aren't fully like diving into with their music, but it's like something that you can like actually, because it's kind of like it's science, like it's like science.
Actually, what you're talking about, Apple Music is going to be requiring people to have new technology for that, for their singles. And that's something we'll talk about on another program.
I'm a big believer in letting that artist's creativity really thrive because it's the whole point of the art. So kind of where do you find that balance? If you're managing an artist, do you kind of ever have maybe not a struggle, but some type of, where the creativity meets the business side or anything like that you've had to kind of work through or any type of experience in that way?
Absolutely. And I'm a little bit different from an artist management standpoint in that I'm also a singer. I don't work as an artist. I'll show up at things and perform. But I grew up listening to so many different types of genres, and in that I learned the true art of everything that they do, and I see so deep into that. I love it, and just hearing the influences that he has. He didn't just pick hair bands from that era. He picked ones that had powerhouse drums and heavy guitars, but a powerful singer, and who knows what influence that has in his music then and upcoming, but he sees into something like that. It's like he talked about old school, but it's old soul. I mean, he sees deep into that kind of thing, and you have to have artists like that. That's what I look for. But when it comes to the business side, you hear him talking so much that he's learned already. You have to be that. You have to think like an entrepreneur, not just like an artist. We're all right-brained and left-brained, and at one time you could just be one or the other. At one time you could be this artist who just loves his music and that's all you do. But now the playing field is leveled with AR, VR, AI, VR, all the new technology with the apps and the ways that you can get your music out. If you are not part entrepreneur, you don't have a chance anymore. You see these artists coming out, they're studying this stuff. They don't just leave it up to their manager. And a manager needs an artist that understands that. Because one of the things you got to do, for instance, is raise capital. It costs money to break an artist, and a lot of these think that they're going to do that just by the money they rake in from live performances, for instance. If you don't have an entrepreneurial mindset, you're not going to raise the money you need to raise to be that artist. You're not going to be able to talk business when you sit in the boardrooms. It's not what a lot of people see just by watching TV and movies. So what I say is, if you're one of those artists, you're always watching American Idol, you better make sure you watch Shark Tank too, because the questions that they ask on Shark Tank are the questions you're going to need to answer in your own career.
Right. I mean, I feel like an artist has to wear so many hats and has to learn so many different aspects of the business. I mean, and this is a tricky business, as far as your expertise, Terry, when he's going to launch an album in 2023, are there any types of pillars that are, this, and this are things that have to happen? Oh, yeah. Or maybe, So can you maybe step us through those?
It would be too heavy to get into on one program, but we can get into the top levels of it. And basically, when you come out with a project, you need to have the project together. Or even if you're just doing songs, you have to have them weeks in advance. I mean, you need a 6-week start on any of the the streaming platforms and things like that. And you need to understand more than just, for instance, I'm on TikTok and I want to get my song out to people on TikTok. They have a different algorithm than Instagram, so you can have less followers and go viral. But at the same time, you need to know about companies like Songfluencer, who instead of you just going out and trying to pay different influencers to put your song in their video, instead they run contests. And I think it's the top 20, get some kind of financial prize with that. And they, you can look up Songfluencer and you can find more about that. But that's one thing, for instance, that you need to know. You need to know how to register your songs with the right, organizations. You need to make sure that you've researched the distributors and have your stuff in the system way before it happens. Some things you'll have to register your numbers twice. And when it comes to your live performing, you're on stage. You got to be the salesman and talk about the song when it comes out. Most importantly, and a lot of this gets ignored, you have to have an email list. You have to have a MailChimp or a Constant Contact or something. People think that email is dead, and I always say, if it is, why does Facebook email? Why does Instagram email? You're on all these people's email list. And it's because if you're on those platforms and you're just using that, then you're renting your list. In order to own your list, you have to have an email list, and you have to learn what content to put in that email, not make it overcomplicated like a newsletter. And even with that, people in understanding the renting your list, if you remember Periscope or MySpace or anybody that's old enough to remember that, they just went away. And you also when you're doing this, when you're connecting the technology with AI coming in, realizing how that can really level things up. It's not just the things they're talking about. It gives a better way, and it's going to even grow in this, a better way to get the data for marketing, the metrics that you can reach. It's also going to affect your live show and what you're able to offer. It's going to be a better discovery tool, as it grows for people to discover independent artists. There's so many ways that it's going to level, the field for independent artists. And so AI is something that I think they need to have more discussions about and, really delve into how is this going to be useful, not how is it going to replace the musician. Because I think that's where all the focus is, but they're really missing some great opportunities by not talking more about this.
Do you feel like it's hard to get traction on those type of things, or you feel like you're getting like a slow build with follower count and things like that and views and those type of things?
It's always slow. I feel like slow is better than fast because I feel like if you go too fast, then it runs out faster,
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a slow build for sure. I feel like I've gained a lot more on Apple Music than Spotify because they're all different platforms, and so it's just what people use and what they don't use,
So now playing live venues, that's the other way that we are able to gain following or put awareness about our music out there, things like that. And so EKLY's had experience on the Evening Muse stage. Have you been playing anywhere else yet? Or do you plan on that?
No, I took a little break from music during the school year. I'm not gonna lie. Like since I feel I slowed down a lot, and that was like during the image finding thing, and just making music for just around me. But yeah, no, I haven't. It was just the Party Animals Garage and then the Evening Muse. So that was about it. The Party Animals Garage was probably the best one.
I gotta say, I've not heard of that one. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
The Party Animals Garage was mind-blowing. Like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Like, that was so dope. But the Party Animals Garage, that was my first time on stage, and that was absolutely crazy. So there was there could have been there was probably 100 people there, and they did a little interview before, and then it was on stage, and it was just...
So as far as playing live, Terry, do you feel like... right now, especially we went past COVID, so we had a dip in all of that kind of activity. And, now we're kind of up and out of that. As far as playing live, what do you feel like artists should look for when they're trying to do bookings or, how do they pick the correct venues and things like that to suit their genre and their followings? Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I do. Some of it might be controversial to different genres, but
we're ready for it.
Number one, never, ever, ever, ever pay to play. Not with a club owner.
I agree.
Not with a promoter. And in hip hop and R&B especially, I see this because the venues seem to be less for some reason, but there are a lot of promoters that they'll hold conferences, and you pay to play, or they will have some event where they'll invite 5 or 10 artists and they'll charge them each to come pay and play on stage, or they'll give them a certain amount of tickets that they have to buy and go sell to their friends or whatever, and they'll base their spot on the program based on that part. Avoid that at all cost. If you have to show up with something on a street corner and gather your own crowd, is better than pay to play.
I really appreciate that. If we're talking about venues and what it takes to get an album off the ground, what it means for your work to grow legs. And we've talked about, getting UPC codes and registering, whether it's with ASCAP, VMA. It's very important to protect your, creative property.
Yeah, performing rights organizations. You're right.
Yes. And there's multiple ways that you can do that. Terry, what you've been doing here, you've been really working hard to educate artists. And I know that you speak at a lot of different places.
The latest thing that I've been doing, because I used to be a singer, I've been pulling that back out, and I've been showing up at things like open mics. I'm actually doing a performance with this unique concept next week where they're called one band. They have one rehearsal, one concert, and then you disband. And it's like a massive band. We have a horn section, 2 drummers, 2 bass players, 2 violinists, 3 guitar players, 3 or 4 vocalists. And I did that because I wanted to get involved, with the community that way, but show the performance aspect of things. and say, here's, even in this, in one rehearsal, here's what you can do, here's what you can make happen, and, go take it somewhere. So I'm trying to, little things like that where it's more of an inspiring situation and not just an information situation, because I believe in these performers. Like, I love art so much. My wife works for a museum, and she's a poet that, they paint her in murals. We're this couple that just loves art so much that we're trying to get this next generation, and even the older ones that think their dream is gone, that they can come back into what they're doing and say, hey, I can really pull this off. I can build my own tribe, and I can be relevant.
I think that's the best compass we can have as artists, because it's just so easy for art to be taken over by things beyond our control. You know, when we talk about being an independent artist, how EKLY is now, and he's going to have to think about, is this beneficial for me to just maybe only have a manager that has those connections, and I have information available to me, and I don't need to, split, profits with, a label, or have them, take advantage anymore, because we just don't live in that type of, industry anymore. But to be inspiring, that's so important. I think that, when we talk about big labels, I think most, young people, when they're first starting out, think that's the only way to have success in the music industry is to, get signed to Atlantic, or, just that's the only thing there. And there's just so many other avenues where you can really create a following and a good, a good creative lifestyle. And I think it's important for people, like you and I, when we're talking about educating people, making sure, that they know to protect their music, and they know what not to fall into, like the pay to play thing, the pay to win this contest thing. It's such a common trap for people who are just really trying to get started and move through it. So I think it's super important for there to be people out there with the integrity in mind that art comes first. And because in my opinion, bad art can create a sick society. If you think about major labels or, things as just a money machine, and it's just diluting art, but it's like so fed to mass, what does that say about our society, or, art in general? And I know that you would understand that, especially, with your wife being an artist, it's
she's a poet, but she's around so many artists, and they're our friends.
Right.
Like, we go to their premieres, and we see the phenomenal things that they've done, that they learned over time. And it's the same thing with real performers. I mean, they took either so many lessons, or they really rehearsed so long on their own. But you're talking about the major label thing. And it's not just major labels. There's a lot of, marketing when it comes to music, and they're just putting out who's popular, who's not who's great. And that you got to understand the business side of that. So to balance that, you got to learn to be both. You got to learn to market yourself, but you also got to learn to just be phenomenal. I even say one of the things I say about local music is people always say, support me because I'm local. And I say, no, ask me to support you because you're incredible. It doesn't matter if you're local or national, be incredible. Right. And like record labels, 90%, I think at least, of the people that get signed get dropped maybe after the first album. And, or you can have a 5-year shelf life if you're a great artist. They're the Michael Jacksons and the Garth Brookses and the Whitney Houstons of the world are very, very, very rare. Most of the people you see are one-hit wonders or 2 or 3 hit wonders, and they're trying to live off that on live dates, the rest. But then there are people that really reinvent themselves. Like there's this artist, she used to come to my seminars when she was like 11 or 12 years old, and I would see her at these conferences. She would go to all these seminars with her mother, and her name was Joanna Levesque, I believe is how you pronounce it, but she became this artist named JoJo. She got signed. She did a couple albums. They went double platinum, I believe. And then she did a movie with Robin Williams, and then she was on some TV show. And it's like right now she's playing in Moulin Rouge on Broadway, but she's taken her brand, I see, and just kept on, going with it. And she was like him. Like she was this little, 11 or 12-year-old girl that was singing like a powerhouse, but she was thinking like a business person at that age. Right. And when you see people like that, that they'll be able to figure this thing out. They just need to go do it. And that's what I love about EKLY. I'm so impressed, already.
Yeah. And that's that thing with that drive, right? You know, if we don't have that business mind with the artistry, you know, you're going to end up having to find something else that you're going to have to do to support that music. And, you know, you don't want to have to compromise your time. So, you know, EKLY, when you think about, you know, this music career going forward, and I know that you're in school and you know, as far as music goes, do you feel like this is like your main calling in life, or is this kind of like a malleable moment for you where you're kind of figuring that out? How would you describe it?
I mean, I don't even know.
Like, could you see yourself doing this like as your, you know, main thing, or do you think you have maybe other? Yeah.
No, I understand the question, but it's just answering it that's hard, you know, because there's so many things that a person wants to do, you know, because your mind just spans from so many different places. But
Right.
you know, because I didn't even start with music, I started with hockey, you know. And like I wanted to, I mean, everybody wants to be like, when you're young, you want to do so many things. You know, you hear astronauts want to be famous, you know, just a bunch of stuff. But, you know, I wanted to be either a football player or I play hockey. But I played hockey since I started skating when I was like 8. So, you know, I played hockey for a while and I thought I wanted to make it to like CHL type and like to NHL, you know, just get up there. And then I started to notice that like I just didn't. I mean, like super good at, you know, I went up to Liberty University and played hockey there for a little bit for a camp. You know, I went up for a camp and then they told me to come back the next year. And, you know, so it was like really getting somewhere. And then, but I don't know, like, it's just, I feel like, you know, even when my mom asked me to do travel or something, I was always say no, even though hockey's like, I really love it. Like, I really love the sport, but I feel like I'm not in love with the sport. But, I feel like with music, I mean, there's been times where I was like, damn, this is like maybe like this is a waste of time. You know what I'm saying? But maybe it really wasn't. You know what I'm saying? Because it takes a process, you know, because before I was just thinking about that and I was like you were talking about earlier and you were talking about like when you're young, you like the different times you see people blowing up at like 15, like Billie Eilish blew up at like 15. So when I was younger, I used to look at that and I'm like, I'm starting to get, I don't know, this is really dumb to say, but I was like, I'm starting to get too old, like, but I'm only 17, like, I'm not even out of my teens yet. But
I know, I had the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm starting to get too, like, what if it just keeps getting harder and harder, you know what I'm saying? But it's only been 2 years since 15, so, I mean, it's really not that, you know, but, yeah.
Such a long journey. I don't know how you
Oh, my God.
That's how I used to think when I was younger, but no, now it's like, you know, it's just like I'm sitting in front of like a bunch of like really big people right now that are like doing a lot of stuff. So I feel like that's just like, you know, mind opening for me at itself by itself.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, if it's through music, it's through music. I mean, with you, I can tell, you know, I know you're talking about hockey, but you're just so bright. And I feel like, you know, it's very obvious that you have a faith in yourself. And I think that that's something that people are magnetized to. And I know that you had talked, I've seen in the bio about, you know, your lyrics and how, you know, it's important for you to incorporate like positivity and things like that. When I'm talking to you and just getting to know you, I feel like you are very much like that type of a light that people can be inspired by because of that faith that you have, you know, in yourself and your talents and capabilities, and that, you know, there is no limit for you. When you are, you know, writing as far as, you know, positive lyrics, are there like specific messages that you feel like, you know, really speak to your character that you kind of want to convey through your artistry? What do you think about that?
I mean, not necessarily, but I feel like when I write lyrics, I try not to dive too deep into what I'm like really thinking into my mind and try to more create an image where the listener can create an image in their mind and try to like make an idea of what's going on in their life and compare it to my lyrics and what's going on instead of just talking about exactly straight up what's going inside my life. Because that, you know, that just gets boring. You know, if you're just talking about everything that's going on inside your life and stuff, I feel like, you know, that's just being, I don't know, like, you know, you're just constantly talking about you, you know? But if you're talking about, if you're creating enough space for somebody to like actually listen and get in between what's happening in your lyrics and like, dang, that's like kind of happening in my life too. So not get too deep into it, but get deep enough into it where they're like, yo, this is happening in my life. Like, this kind of pushing me through it though a little bit, you know? So like, you just gotta, it's like, it's like a really fine line in between. But yeah, that's what I like to do with that. Just create enough space in between where someone can compare to their own life, you know?
Right. Yeah. Where like a song can take multiple different meanings depending on who's listening to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is hard because, you know, sometimes I know for me, when I write, sometimes I want to be super specific, but, you know, that doesn't always work in a commercial sense, you know,
Right.
But you never know who's listening and who's going through a similar experience. You know, there's a quote I've heard about how, you know, you listen to music, and you love the song, but the lyrics are what kind of stays with you over time.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to hear that you've really got this, you know, kind of storyboard approach and you're thinking about who's listening. Have you ever experimented with kind of like writing, you know, without thinking about the listener at all? It's like an exercise I've tried to do a couple times, but it's very interesting to see what kind of happens from that type of approach.
Yeah, for sure. Because if you just think about, if you like just write thinking about what other people want to hear and stuff, then you're just not gonna feel like that you're just doing stuff for other people. You know, you got to really like right. So yeah, I've, you know, some of the stuff or a lot of the stuff I write is just doing stuff that I feel like helps me speak by myself. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like everybody has a certain thing that they do to like push through a lot of stuff and just do what they want to speak their mind. You know, it's like a lot of people speak their mind by writing it down on a sheet of paper or drawing or stuff, or a therapist or anything, just anything like that. Therapy can be a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? So my therapy, I feel like, is music. So I put my therapy in the music and creating my like what I'm thinking, but making it just like seeing it, you know, in front of me. It's hard to explain instead of actually seeing it in my mind.
EKLY, do you feel like there's anything that you'd like to say to the listeners today?
Yeah, I feel like this could tie into anything, but to accept what is, let go of what was, and have faith in what will be. And you can just take that, and I'm not even gonna dive into it, but just take that how you want to take it, because that can like just go into anything, you know, anything in your life, and just compare it to anything.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, thanks a lot, you guys. I'm just so happy to hear about your experience and your expertise. And it's just good to keep this conversation going. Thank you all for listening to rBeatz Radio. This is the Local Music Somewhere segment. Be sure to check out EKLY and all his socials. And we have Terry Hudson and all his socials listed as well. Thanks for joining us, guys, and stay tuned for next week. All right.
Thanks as always for tuning into rBeatz Radio. Search for more local music somewhere on rbeatz.com and follow our social media for highlighted artists as we travel with #LocalMusicSomewhere.